the creators who brought you RuPaul's Drag Race and $1 Million Listing. This is World of Wonders Wow Report. Things that make us go wow.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Wow Report, where we count down every week the top 10 things in this past week that made us go wow. I'm Fender Bailey, co-founder of World of Wonder, joined by our Chief Creative Officer, Tom Campbell. Sounds like a military assignation. You should have a medal or something.
Salute.
And our editrix-in-chief, why not in-chief, James St. James of the Wow Report.
Yeah, for our radio listeners, you can't see, but for the viewers at home, I look like I'm wearing a crown made of neutrons, don't I?
Yeah.
I look like I'm a space goddess today.
You're actually framed by a circular globe logo surrounded by electrons that I drew.
That's you. Well, it looks beautiful. I look fantastic right now. This is the best I've ever looked.
Don't go anywhere without it, James. All right, let's start the countdown. I think we should start at number 10.
Number 10.
I am obsessed. I know we say that a lot. I am so obsessed. I am beyond obsessed. I will mention this to anyone who walks by me near my home. I am listening. I hope you are going to start listening to Talking with Lucy on Sirius XM, channel 104, just 2 channels above Radio Andy. Quick backstory for those listening. Lucy Arnaz, who's 70 years old. Do you feel old yet? Lucy Arnaz is doing a documentary about Lucy and Ricky because if you live long enough, you can do 3, 4, 5 documentaries about your parents, and they're all worth watching.
Now, Lucy Arnaz, for the people who don't know, is Lucille Ball's daughter in real life.
Yes, and Desi Arnaz. And she's responsible for their archive and for keeping it all alive. The movie that's coming up, she's involved in. Anyway, she found while doing research for a documentary a year's worth, like 200 episodes of a radio talk show that Lucy did in the year 1964 and 1965. And they're saying that she's the creator of the podcast. I'll give it to her. She, with her husband, Gary Morton at the time, her second husband, she's carried around, either that she'd have people in her home with a tape-to-tape player, and she'd invite people over and talk to them, or she'd go to their hotel, or she'd go backstage. And if you can just think of who's who in show business in 1964, who's a megastar, they are interviewed by Lucille Ball. These intimate things. They're 10-minute segments. And then she's like, oh my God, we just started. James, you mind staying until next week? Here's who she's talking to. Edith Head, Bing Crosby, Mary Tyler Moore, Carol Burnett backstage on Broadway, a newlywed Barbara Streisand in her new apartment.
Frank Sinatra, Milton Berle, Arlie. Okay, I'm obsessed. And then weird people. Hedda Hopper. Fantastic! Yes,
Arlie.
Alone for the Edith Head of it all, the great costume designer of Paramount, right? She was at Paramount.
Yes. And Hedda Hopper, who was the great gossip columnist I'm obsessed with.
Have these never been heard before? Were they used before for something?
They aired on the radio at the time, and then they've just been in storage for 57 years or whatever.
They just haven't, and there was never really a venue for them. And now it makes perfect sense. They're on Sirius XM right now, and I think they're going to eventually be podcasts, so we can all listen to them forever and ever. I listen to them in my car, one after another. There's so much insight. It is just this microscope on a certain time, on a certain, and also it's all about, Lucy wants to have people know celebrities in a different way. So it's like Edith Head, it's more about like, well, what's your house like? So she explains a great deal her home. And
that's the interesting thing is that it's not Lucy being Lucy. It's Lucy. She's the chain-smoking CEO of Desilu Productions, and she's getting to the nitty-gritty about these people's lives, and she's kind of tough on some people, and she's no nonsense. And like the Mary Tyler Moore, which I listened to today, it's not about she's saying you're a good kid and you're gonna go far, but tell me about how you learned to do this and why you put your hands like this and where's their dance training. Like she's a tough boss is what she is. And it's a whole different side of Lucy than many people know.
And she's good at it. Sometimes people don't she's curious, she's inquisitive, she's kind, she's tough love, and it flies by because they're 10-minute segments. I am obsessed. James, do you remember maybe Fenton? Arlene Dahl.
Oh my God, yes, the wigs. I love. She was on When I Was Live. I loved Arlene Dahl. She is Lamas, Fernando Lamas' son.
One of his wives.
The wild redhead of Hollywood.
Yes.
And then she was an astrologer for many years.
It's 1964. She's on with Lucy. She speaks, and Lucy has sort of a bit of a mid-Atlantic accent too.
But Arlene was very highfalutin.
And Lucy tells us what a great, Norwegian beauty she is, which she was. And it's like, I'm here. Tell us, Arlene Dahl. What book have you just written? She goes, well, it's called Ask a Man. And it's a fashion book for women, but I've spent the last 2 years, Lucy, talking to important men in business and in entertainment. And some are leg men, some are breast men, some like an elbow. An elbow? Yes, Lucy. Everyone loves something. But what they're all missing, what they all are looking for, femininity. And there's this trend with boots and pants and fedoras. It's just, Brenner told me, it just makes women sit different. It's just this, and it's not even like it's archaic. It is in a way, and it's so exactly how, it's just, people are able to articulate. Bill Bixby, the young star of I Married, my favorite.
I love Bill Bixby. I love that Lucy is always saying, well, Orson Welles used to tell me, it's very much like FDR was in my apartment once.
I have a question, which is, one difference you just said is that people speak in complete sentences and they're able to articulate themselves. But another is like, how is celebrity different? Does it feel more approachable? Does it feel more intimate? Does it feel more real to the people, or is it still starry?
I don't think they feel real. The Mid-Atlantic accent and the highfalutin airs and everything. I feel like everybody knew they were stars and acted accordingly, even when they were with other stars. Don't you feel like that there was sort of a rarefied air of what was happening?
Yes, but the way that Lucy framed it, and Lucy is now 14 years and she's doing the Lucy show. Here's Lucy. I Love Lucy is coming on.
Okay, Vivian Vance is on. That's a good one.
The Here's Lucy show. And then it's about, she's been in Hollywood since the 30s, so she's had this incredible career. She's in her 50s talking about this. She has teenage kids. Lucy's 13, Desi Jr.'s 11 and a half. And she's married to Gary and very happily married. But she always makes show business feel like it's a lot of hard work. It's, preparing for those breaks. It's being professional. And it's kind of a club that she's really proud and excited and privileged to be part of, which I have to say years ago, I know we have to go, but I used to talk my way back to see Steve Lawrence and Edie Gourmet when they performed in Vegas in the 90s. And just the fact that I was from ABC at the time or MTV, they'd bring me, come on in. Because after the show was like a party. It's like, we're all in showbiz. Let's have a drink. Let's enjoy this incredible, fraternity or sorority that we're part of. And that's what it feels like to me. It feels like Lucy is definitely a more of an elder, but she's imparting all this wisdom and extracting it from younger performers. I love it. I might talk about it every week for the next 16, 17
right. Everybody can just leave the show now and go over to 104 to listen to Let's Talk to Lucy on Sirius XM. But if you do stick with us, you will get James St. James at number 9.
Number 9.
As obsessed as you are, Tom, I am equally obsessed with a show on HBO Max right now that every queen in the country is going bananas over. I'm talking about The White Lotus. My God, have you all watched this? Do you know what I'm talking about? It is the gay. Well, we're going to get to that. Tom is making an obscene gesture right now, and we'll get to that one. But it is the gayest of the gay shows ever created. It stars gay icon Jennifer Coolidge in the role she was born to play. She has never been better. She plays a nutty, lush, rich woman. It takes place at this very expensive Hawaiian resort and spa. And so there's a number of people who come in and they all sort of intersect and everybody is sort of like living these sort of strange lives. But Jennifer Coolidge is just beyond bananas. And she's there to spread her dead mother's ashes in the ocean. And she has a series of breakdowns over the course of the 6 episodes. And it gets better and better and better. Also, Connie Britton is in it. And Connie Britton is at her most brittle. They don't call her, she's Connie Brittle. Britton is what she is. And she is a nasty CEO, sort of a neurotic overachiever, and she brings her family, and she's like controlling everybody. And her husband is Steve Zahn. It's really fantastic. Molly Shannon is in it. She's absolutely brilliant. So good. And also Alexandra Daddario. There's also, I don't know if you guys remember this, a couple months ago, maybe a year ago, there was a boy who was asked to audition over his phone. And when he was doing it, the director started saying, "Oh, these people in these disgusting apartments." And he said, "I can hear you. And if you give me the job, I'll get a better apartment." If you remember that, it went viral. Well, he's on the show, and he's just absolutely adorable. And he gets his ass eaten by this man in a scene that is so lewd and crude and fabulous. And you just think, well, God bless, he got himself a job. And I'm glad that this is what the job is. It's so fun. If you aren't watching this, you need to, because you can still get caught up. There's 5 episodes so far. The final episode is Sunday. Yes, Tom.
I know I have to watch it because everyone's talking about it.
Everybody.
Is it anthology? Is it like The Love Boat, or like
Yeah.
How does it?
Well, they have been renewed for a second season, and the second season is going to be a whole new cast. I think they're going to keep the same manager. He's sort of this Machiavellian manager who is controlling everybody's lives and sort of inserts himself into everybody's lives.
I can't wait to watch it. You know, it's written by Mike White, right?
Yes, yes. Buck and Chuck, isn't it? Isn't that what his first thing was? Yes.
Pasadena.
Yes. And he is a nut in the first degree. And every single scene, it leaves you just unnerved and weirdly like feeling creepy and grossed out. It's just cringe, but it's just fabulous cringe. And you just keep waiting because everybody keeps getting deeper and deeper into their craziness.
One tiny interesting detail is that he is the son of Mel White, and Mel White is in the Eyes of Tammy Faye documentary. He was a pastor, and he wrote biographies of Jerry Falwell before he came out as gay and left.
So it all comes back to Fenton. No matter how far we get, it can all be dragged back to Fenton.
I am building you a segue of all mother-tucking segues. Number 8.
Number 8.
I've been reading a book, and it is called Jesus and John Wayne, and it is by Christine Cobes-Dumas. And the subtitle of this said book is How White Evangelicals Corrupted a Faith and Fractured a Nation. I know we're not allowed to mention his name here on this show. I know he's no longer the president, but I have always been confused by how it was that 82% of good Christian Americans would have voted for someone who's married multiple times.
I thought you had told us that the reason why was because of Jerry Falwell's, or because of the pool boy in the
that's the reason. Well, that's the reason how he managed to get into power. But nonetheless, still, he required 82% of these people to vote for him. You know, the endorsement helped, but it's still, there's a paradox of how the Christian people could support someone who's so fundamentally antagonistic to all Christian values. He's, there's no need to.
Well, God's vessels are not always perfect.
But it's so interesting. She charts the evolution of what she calls the militant evangelical Christian right. And one of the most fascinating parts of this, for me anyway, was this idea that emerged in recent years, especially post-Vietnam, of, those pictures of Jesus Christ. He's white, he's got long blonde hair, he's gentle, and they hate that. That whole idea went out of fashion. And Jerry Falwell, Mel White wrote his biography, Jerry Falwell was one of a number of people who sort of moved to have portraits of Jesus as a warrior with a sword, with muscles, with short cropped hair.
Oh,
and part of this package of beliefs was also that men dominated and that women were required to be subservient because men's libido was God-given, and therefore women married to their men needed to accommodate this, needed to make themselves sexy and subservient. And by extension also, any feminization was seen as the devil's work. So kids, boys growing up who weren't manly enough, gay, were just seen as the devil. And so you get this really interesting evolution of ideas in which gayness is certainly, problem number one, same-sex marriage, of course, problem number two, And it's the creep of a worldview that is, you end up at a certain point, I guess it's like an egg in boiling water. You don't notice it at first, and then maybe 25, 30 years have passed, and you're like, WTF? They say they believe in the Bible, but this isn't what's in the Bible,
It's funny because just as you were talking, I went and Googled Jesus sword short hair, and I got a picture, and it looks like he should be wearing a trucker hat. He's got the beard. He looks like he could be driving a tractor. Like, they know exactly that you turn. Yeah, exactly. Tom, you turn Jesus into a Midwestern MAGA head, and you got yourself some followers.
You sure do. I mean, you have preachers who talk about, the nation being pussified, and you don't want to raise children who are pussified. It's like, it's a really interesting thing. Even though I've read the whole book now, I still don't know that I've got the whole picture or been able to take in the whole picture. And of course, the ultimate irony is that here are these people believing in the Bible and saying everything in the Bible is true. No one was white in the Bible. Not a single one of them. So
Benson, why are you looking for the truth? It's all, religion is just a master manipulation. It's just a brand name stuck to like whatever they want it to be.
Well, I have a sister who's evangelical, and I could sit down and tell you some stories about what they believe. It will just curl your toes.
Well, you must be going straight to hell in her book.
Oh, she's the one that hasn't spoken to me in 30 years.
Oh, okay.
Because I'm gay.
Right?
What?
Yeah. Oh, that's true. I am.
All right, I'm going to move on. We'll take a break. It's a really good book, though, by the way. Wojnarowicz is screening at the Outfest Film Festival this Sunday. That's August 15th. And you know what? It's free screening at I think it's at the DGA. It is. You just go to outfestla2021.com and you can get a free ticket. And there's going to be also a discussion, a Q&A with Chris McKim, the director and producer, in conversation with Dave Holmes, who is the co-host of Homophilia, which is a WOW podcast. So all you evangelicals out there, come down, get a load of Fuck You, Faggot Fucker, the Wojnarowicz film, which is completely brilliant, if I do say so myself.
If you say "fuck you, faggot fucker," Blake just appears. It's like Beetlejuice.
Right.
I know. Well, and today is Friday the 13th.
Right.
So, I wanted to ask, how many times a year is the most amount of times that we could have a Friday the 13th?
Okay,
we'll have the answer right up. Thank you for that reminder, Tom. I just was off there trying to think of the answer. We'll have the answer for you right after the break. You're listening to the WOW Report on Radio Andy.
You're listening to World of Wonders WOW Report. Things that make us go wow.
Welcome back to the WOW Report. I'm Fenton here with Tom and James and Blake. We're counting down the top 10 things this week that made us go wow. We had a little teasy type question to keep you tuned over the break. What was it?
Well, since today is Friday the 13th, I've asked, how many times is the most amount of times you can have a Friday the 13th in 1 year?
I think you can only have it twice.
Twice feels logical to me.
Well, there's 12 months, so you could have it 12 times, but there must be some mathematical problem. So I'm going to say 5.
3.
So close.
Yeah.
And why is that?
It's because of some mathematical thing that I don't know, but
don't press him. Don't press him.
There's only one this year. There's only one next year, but there were 2 last year.
Right.
All right.
Well, that's why I said it. Yeah. Okay.
Well, happy Friday the 13th, everyone. We're doing the top 10 countdown. We've reached number 7.
Number 7.
I started talking about talking with Lucy. Now I want to talk about cooking with Paris. There's a new show called Cooking with Paris Hilton, on Netflix. It has dropped. I got through 1 episode. Here's the weird thing.
You're not obsessed, are you?
I love Paris Hilton. I love that she exists. I love that she thrives, that she looks better than ever. I don't know that I can watch her for long periods of time. I'm not trying to be mean about that.
You're just not sliving.
Yes. And is that new? Because sliving is the word. This is what you get. Sliving. So she's like, my sliving gloves, which means slaying and living your best life. So that's her new, that's hot. It's sliving. Everything.
It's the new smizing is what it is. Sliving is the new smizing.
There you go. And so it starts off and they're doing everything right in terms of making fun of Paris. And she's in the grocery store and they shoot it really like Stepford Wifey. And she's in a pink Barbie gown and buying cereal boxes, and through lots of voiceover you get that she's going to get married, so she's going to have children, so she should learn how to cook. And so she's calling all her friends in her home with her assistants that are around, but they're not real characters in the first episode, but party planners and assistants. And her house is all white to begin with. I think it's a real house, and her kitchen. And then she has, thousands of balloons have been brought in, and we get a little, and then she invites over Kim Kardashian just to bring it down, to balance, some real. And Kim Kardashian does come off as Martha Stewart next to Paris. There are glimpsy tiny moments of like, oh my God, these guys have known each other forever. How cool that they're together talking, but it's really flat. And it's a parody of cooking shows. I don't even like cooking shows, so I'm not missing like takeaway or anything, but it's just, I don't know what it is because the parody isn't strong enough or she's not.
But Paris her whole affect is flat, isn't it? I mean, it is.
Yes. And that's what I'm saying. But to me, it's sort of Simple Life Means No Exit by John Paul Sartre, because heaven or hell is people, right? It's just the idea that you get into this like closed space, because it's making fun of everything the way the Simple Life did, but you had Nicole Richie, and you had people, you had farms and cows and co-workers and
to bounce off of, and she has nothing to really bounce off of.
It's just ingredients and
and other people like her as opposed to someone who can be a foil.
Yes.
Didn't this start with a YouTube video? Didn't she do a YouTube video of cooking? Like, this isn't the first time we talked about the show. And
she cooked lasagna on Instagram or something, right, and it got 800 billion hits, which made somebody at Netflix say, let's make this show. And she has like a cookbook that's all bejeweled that Kim says, oh my God, I used to always bejewel things. Oh my God. And it's all handwritten in different rainbow color markers, which you kind of know Paris didn't do. So it's just a lot of production to sort of prop her up. And they're kind of admitting including her, she's admitting she's being propped up. I mean, there's nothing egregious happens. It is the flat effect. Okay, I'm going to give you some incredible dialogue and then we can move on. Kim Kardashian, because like she's cutting bacon and the recipe calls for them to cut inch slices. And Kim goes, does this look like an inch? And Paris says, I don't know. I don't have one of those measuring things. Meaning a ruler. Another one. She makes homemade marshmallows based on her favorite cereal, which are Lucky Charms. So it's like a aqua colored marshmallows, and it's not going well. And at some point, she pulls out a little flame thing, which makes me think of drug use, and she is crystallizing them on top. And Paris goes, "Why is it turning brown?" And Kim says, "Because it's cooking." Thank you. And then the other thing is, at one point, Kim goes, do you have tongs? And Paris says, what's that? And then Kim's like, it's the picky up things.
So, the show that I want to see is you performing Cooking with Paris. I'd watch a whole half hour of that.
It is a Saturday Night Live sketch ready to happen, but without the punchlines. I think people we've worked on it. I'm not trying to shame anyone. And there's more, like she makes tacos with Saweetie and, but I've read some other reviews and I don't think I'm going to stick with it. It's just, yeah.
You aren't going to binge seasons 1 through 10.
I'm trying to figure out what I would have. I'm always thinking, because I would want to work with Paris. Like, what could they have done? I don't know exactly, but that's when I came up with Simple Life Meets No Exit. That's my review.
Have you watched it, James?
I have not, but I love Paris, and I'm not going to say a bad thing about her.
Did I thought I was as fair as I could be.
You trashed her like I've never seen you trash anybody before, Tom. She's going to send a hitman after you. That was one of the worst things I've ever heard on the show from you.
Moving on.
You're like Sarah Sliverman.
Sliving.
Moving on to number 6.
Number 6.
Number 6, I want to talk about the biggest news of the week. A bombshell was dropped on the entertainment industry, on the comic book industry, when it was revealed that Batman's Robin, is bisexual. He is officially, canonically bisexual. He came out this week in a comic book as he was defending some boy, and he started getting these thoughts and feelings. And at the end of the issue, he goes up to the boy and he says, I don't know what I'm feeling. I don't know what is going on, but I want to know more. And the boy says, will you go on a date with me? And he says, yes, that is what I want exactly. And when I tell you that if I would have had that at age 10, my whole life would have been completely different. It is so wonderful to see. And I want to just, this is, Fenton, you were going to.
Oh, James, I just want to know how your life would be different. I wanted to know that
everything would have been better from that moment on. Like I would have felt like accepted. I never would have had to go to New York. I could have just stayed in Michigan.
What would we have lost?
You'd be like a bank teller in Florida.
I would be completely happy with where I was, what I was doing. This is not the Robin that you know, Fenton, from the TV show. Batman has had a number of Robins over the years, and they all die. They grow up. They become other superheroes.
They were gay. That's what has to happen.
They try and get away from Batman because he's creepy and controlling. This is Tim Drake, okay? And Tim Drake has always had a little bit of a gay vibe around him. He's been dating this girl for about 20 years named Stephanie, but he's also had this bromance with Superboy. And every gay nerd knows that when Superboy and Robin get together, that sparks fly. And everyone has been hoping for this forever and ever and ever. So it's very satisfying to see. And Nerdist did this wonderful column about the history of Batman and Robin's queerdom. And
you gotta post that link. I want to read that.
Yeah, it's really fascinating because just in a quick nutshell, that Batman and Robin being gay is something that, has been in pop culture forever and ever and ever. People have been making fun of it. And in 1954, a psychiatrist wrote a book called The Seduction of the Innocent, in which he said that comic books were perverting the minds of young Americans, and that specifically Batman and Robin were the wish dreams of homosexuals to live together. And that phrase right there almost brought down the comic industry. Parents refused to let their children buy comic books. Batman and Robin specifically, their sales plummeted. And in reaction to that, DC butched up Robin, made him like a ladies' man, and they gave Batman Batwoman to get married with.
So fascinating because there's no question. I was 6 years old watching Batman and Robin, the TV series. I was obviously responding to the gay vibe. Yes. I didn't know. But, and my parents banned me from watching it because they thought I became overexcited and overstimulated.
Because it was an older man and a younger man that he's adopted, and yet they go around in tights, and it's a very gay setup. It always has been. But they've since made Dick Grayson that Robin. He is the biggest ladies' man in comic books, and he's to this day. So until last week, DC has made a conscious effort to try and get away from the queering of Batman and Robin. And so it's a big deal that Robin is now,
they've finally gone back to their knitting.
Yes, yeah. So it's just, it's big news, and I'm just so happy. Congratulations to Tim Drake.
We got to post that link. All right, we're going to move on to number 5.
Number 5.
Val. Have you seen Val? It is on Amazon Prime.
Oh, the Val Kilmer documentary.
Oh my God!
Oh, everyone is talking about it.
Val Kilmer, for that one person who doesn't know, he was the Iceman in Top Gun. So he was Tom Cruise's antagonist and rival in Top Gun, and for that alone, I will always love him. Yes,
and he was Batman.
And thank you.
Everything ties in. Yes.
He was Batman, and he was also so beautiful.
Oh, Remember in was it Top Secret, that the movie that he did that was sort of like Airplane? Remember that? Yes. I mean, literally, that I just blew your socks off how beautiful he was.
And a great actor.
Yes.
Really, a great actor. Knew how seductive and beautiful and hot he was and played it so well. He was also, of course, Jim Morrison in the Doors movie. He supposedly had a reputation for being very difficult to work with.
But he was an actor's actor. That's why. I mean, he was a perfectionist.
He wasn't just a pretty boy. He was an actor's actor. And of course, his denouement, or one of them certainly, was The Island of Dr. Moreau, which by all reports was a disaster of disasters. All of this stuff, for all of this time, he had a film camera with him, a video camera, and was, like Nelson Sullivan, our inspiration and friend, rest in peace, videotaping everything. And then, twist of fate, he gets throat cancer. And now today, although he's relatively healthy and cancer is in remission, he basically cannot speak. And he has a hole in his throat. And in order to speak, he has to put his finger on the hole and croaks out. And to see this beautiful Adonis transformed, as he himself says, I look awful. It's in some sense heartbreaking, but in another sense, this film is amazing. And you can tell, he said, I've always wanted to make a film about actors and acting. And this is that film. And it's his footage. He filmed it. And he spares, there's no vanity in it. He plays yes, I was a gorgeous twink, but he also plays the tragedy of what's happened to him without any self-pity. His life now basically is going around conventions, signing autographs. And it's sort of heartbreaking and moving on the one hand, because he doesn't shy away. He says, people may think it's sad that I'm living off these past roles, but to me, it's all I can do, number one. And I'm so grateful that people come. And so I was in tears. I thought it was such a powerful film. He's so funny about playing Batman. He says, every kid wants to, dreams of being Batman, but he says, you don't ever want to play Batman. He says, the suit, once you're in that suit, you cannot move. He says after 2 takes, you need air conditioning, respiration, artificial,
And he also says that when you're in the suit, you can't hear anybody. And everyone thought that he was being standoffish and nasty when he really just couldn't hear what the hell was going on.
And after a while, no one talked to him.
Yeah.
And that whole movie that he was in, I think it was the... what's the name? The director who had the very sexy Robin.
Oh, Jerry.
Blake.
Joel Schumacher.
Joel Schumacher.
Right. Anyway. And the Island of Dr. Moreau, there is a brilliant bit. I will just give you this brilliant bit. So the Island of Dr. Moreau is going terribly badly. Val Kilmer's got his video camera out and says that the director can call cut and action as many times as he likes, but it doesn't mean he's a director. And then the director says, turn that video camera off. And Val won't turn it off. And they have this sort of standoff. And then Val just wanders outside. And there, like a beached whale, is Marlon Brando on a hammock. And so he goes up to Marlon Brando and says, what's the one thing the world doesn't know about you? And Marlon Brando is just lying there. And he just says, give me a push. And so he pushes the hammock and he says, give me a hard push. It's just an amazing, it's really an amazing film. And he has had a tragic life, not just suffering from cancer, but his brother was a film director, genius, died very young, age of 15. It's really amazing. I see Academy Awards for this one, maybe. So let's take a break. Whirlybird is now available to rent or buy on Apple TV, iTunes, and Amazon. Get all the latest at whirlybirdmovie.com, which is also a great doc. All right. What's the question?
Well, MTV just turned 40, and I think we might be talking about that in a little bit, but who was the first artist who has ever played twice on MTV?
Good question.
Very good question. I thought I knew the answer, but I don't think I do. We'll have the answer right after the break. Listen to the Wow Report on Radio Andy. We'll be right back.
You're listening to World of Wonders Wow Report. Things that make us go wow.
Welcome back to the Wow Report. I'm Fenton here with James and Tom and Blake. We had a question.
Yeah. Who was the first artist who has ever played on MTV twice?
I was going to say Buggles, of course, because that was the first artist ever played. And I guess maybe they were played twice. It was Buggles' Video Killed the Radio Star.
I'm going to pick between Pat Benatar.
I was going to say maybe Pat Benatar.
Or Rod Stewart. Both had videos at the time.
See, I was going to say, keep going.
You pick yours.
I was going to say either Billy Squier or who was it who did My Life's in Jeopardy. Remember that?
The Jay Giles band?
No. Was it Jay Giles?
No, but I know exactly that song. Anyway, I'm going to say Pat Benatar.
I'm going to say Billy Squier.
Tom, you were right. The first video was the Buggles. The second was Pat Benatar, so that's a good guess. The third was Rod Stewart. He did She Won't Dance With Me. And then 15th was Sailing.
Sailing takes me away to where I'm going.
All right,
now you're listening to Yacht Rock on Radio Andy. Yacht Rock.
Carry on with the countdown. We're at number 4. Tom, what made you go wow this week?
Number 4.
This is breaking news for me. And it's a local LA story. But if you're in LA, Greenblatt's Deli on Sunset, right the Crescent Heights and Sunset, is closing. There was rumors on Tuesday and Wednesday. It was confirmed. It was in the Hollywood Reporter. It's closed at 8 p.m. on Wednesday. Have you guys been to Greenblatt's? You know what I'm talking about?
Well, because it used to be right next door to the old Numbers. Remember the Hustler Bar? Yes, so I would go to Greenblatt's after going to the Hustler Bar.
Brilliant.
You couldn't get any trade.
It's also 8,000. It's also across the street from 8,000 Sunset, which still has a movie theater, but it used to be the Lemleys 5. And remember, the 90s was all about independent films. And I say, as someone who's lived in LA for over 30 years, restaurants are like churches to me. It's the places you went and saw your tribe and saw your people. And Greenblatt's in the 80s, Greenblatt's was the place when I was an assistant at Gallimore Associates where I would order the deli platter for staff lunches. So I would eat Greenblatt's at night. I'd order and eat it for dinner and as well. In the 90s, after independent films, which were the rage, with friends and boyfriends at the time, you would go see a movie there and you go across the street to Greenblatt's afterwards.
Well, wait a minute. Isn't it also right? Like 3 doors down is it what the comedy shed? What is the famous?
Yeah, the Laugh Factory.
The Laugh Factory. Yes. So you would always see those comedians there, like before and after their show.
It's very kind of show, but it's this place. It was open late. People were always there. In the aughts, I worked with my friend Scott McDonald. We worked on those Svedka vodka ads, and we would meet at night there. So like giant campaigns were like launched in the booths upstairs, and I brought sponsees there for my not so private recovery things. And even during the pandemic, because it's right around the corner for me, I would order for delivery, like for comfort and nutrition during the pandemic from Greenblatt. So it's just a restaurant. It'll pass, but it's been there since 1926, and they have like a long list. Marilyn Monroe, who used to live in my building, Joe DiMaggio, Lenny Bruce, Orson Welles. I mean, everyone has been there. And
as well as the Jackie Masons and the Joe, all the Seinfeld, Jerry Seinfeld and Whoopi Goldberg. I mean, everybody. It's like one of those New York delis that like.
Yes. And I'm so scared because I'm sorry, this idea of the places to just go and park and eat and no pretense and good food and get it over with, they're just disappearing. And I'm going to be that old person who longs for the past, but where are the cheap places to eat? And not even cheap.
And Lucy used to bring her reel to the Greenblatt, and she would talk to the ghost of W.C. Fields.
Hey, I updated the story. I could have done Jane Withers' passing.
I was going to do Jane Withers too, and then I was going to, God bless you. Listen, I just very quickly to put in some Jane Withers right there is that Matthew Redeman from Boy Culture, who is a good friend of World of Wonders, he interviewed her recently in 2020, and he was saying, how wild was it that she was a child star in the 1930s, 1920s, silent movies and everything, that someone was alive who worked with W.C. Fields, yes. Shirley Temple, yes. Had stories about Mary Pickford, and she would go to the conventions, she would go to the cons and sit and talk to anybody who would listen to her for an hour, and got like that there was somebody around from that era. It's just amazing to think that history is still alive and all around us.
Indeed. Oh, R.I.P. Jane Withers. Maybe we'll do her next week, right? Give us your number 3, James.
Number 3.
Number 3, I went to go see Suicide Squad. I went to a movie theater. It's the last movie that I'm going to in a theater for probably the next year, I imagine. I went to go see Suicide Squad, DC's it's not a sequel or a prequel. It's an equal to the 2016 Suicide Squad. It was directed by James Gunn, who did the Guardians of the Galaxy for Marvel, and now he's come to DC to do this. It is absolutely hysterical. Once again, the premise is that there are these prisoners, these supervillains that are recruited by a black ops team headed up by the sadistic Amanda Waller, played by Viola Davis. And they are, each one of them has separate superpowers, but they're taken out on a suicide mission that they will probably never return from. But if they act up or refuse to do it, she's implanted bombs in the back of their head and she will blow your head off. And so nobody is safe. All these supervillains, none of them are safe. At any moment, she can blow your head off, and frequently does. And in this one, we have Margot Robbie playing Harley Quinn, and she's absolutely genius. We have Joel Kinnaman, who is so sexy, and he is Rick Flag. We have Idris Elba, who is Bloodsport. I think Pete Davidson is in it. John Cena is the wrestler. John Cena is Peacemaker, and we get penis from him. We get him in tighty whities the whole time. It is absolutely fantastic. The big surprise is, in the history of comic books, there is a character who is universally reviled and considered the silliest character ever to be created, and he's Polka Dot Man, and he shoots polka dots out of his hand. And this was in the 1950s. He was a Batman villain, and James Gunn has brought him back and turned him into the most. You love this character. You empathize with him. You love him. You cry. You laugh. He is the most beloved character ever put on film, basically. And it's absolutely, and it's so funny because this movie is so polarizing. There are people who think that it's the best thing DC has ever done, that it is absolutely hysterical. It is bloody. It is violent. It is campy and everything. But then there are other people who think with a white hot passion that it's the worst movie ever put on film. And it's like this weird, like, Democrats versus Republican, like there's no meeting in the middle of it. I absolutely loved it. I thought it was fantastic. Tom, what were you going to say?
I just wanted to know, do you think that the character Polka Dots earned his stripes in this movie?
There's also another character called the Weasel, who is a weasel who murdered 27 children and ate them. But he is so lovable, and he is, you laugh and you cry about Weasel, and everybody walks out saying that Weasel steals the entire show. He's so. Do you know
the actors by any chance who play these parts, or no?
David Darmachian, I think, is his name, and he's done a lot of things, and he wins a lot of awards. He is Polka Dot Man, and Weasel is played by Sean Gunn, I think. I can't remember, but he was in Guardians of the Galaxy, and he was from Gilmore Girls. He's an actor whose face you would recognize.
All righty, moving on to number 2.
Wait a minute, would you see it, Fenton?
I would see it based on what you've just said. I would
definitely. It's on HBO Max, so you can watch it right now.
I would go check it out. I've always felt that, it's Marvel versus DC, and I'm a Marvel person. But
but I think this might change your mind too, because, like I said, it's James Gunn who did Marvel movies, so it has that same Marvel.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Plus, now that Robin's gone gay,
and you don't need to know who any of these people are because they all get introduced.
Got it. Marvelous. Okay, number 2.
Number 2.
MTV at 40. It was August 1st, 40 years ago. And I tell you why I wanted to talk about this was because, I was scrolling through my Facebook, and suddenly you notice someone saying, 40 years at MTV. And they're talking about what it was like to work there. And then you scroll on, and there's another one, and then another one, and another one. I was like, oh my God, did everybody work at MTV? Tom Campbell, I know you did, right?
I met you when you came to pitch me at MTV in 92.
There you go. I mean, and I just thought it was interesting in that I'm not really aware of any other channel that seems to command such affection from people, in the sense that no one would if NBC turned 50 years or however old NBC might be, I just don't see people having that affection and that real visceral reaction or connection to it. And I also think in the history of all their shows, because the music videos was just the initial phase of MTV, and then they went on to programming, Osbourne's, Jackass, Punk, Laguna Beach, Jersey Shore, The Hills. All of these actually were greenlit by Brian Graydon, who, is on the Facebook feed with, I think it's fascinating. I mean, there's no question it must have changed. It has changed the culture profoundly, right? I think there's a book to be written.
Well, I was 13, I believe, and it was my birthday. August 1st was the day that it debuted, and I remember just it was like a thundercloud. It was like a lightning bolt hitting every teenager simultaneously, and it was a window into especially the British scene and all those Flock of Seagulls and things like that we hadn't seen in America yet, and it really opened up the world to people. Like all of a sudden, you got to see culture, pop culture in a way that you hadn't seen before.
That's right, because the British were really ahead of the game in terms of making music videos.
Like we had Journey and Billy Squier and Pat Benatar, but they were doing like literally, they were the Boy George and
we had the Blitz Kids. We had David Bowie, Ashes to Ashes. We had Visage, Fade to Grey. I mean, this whole sort of second wave, as it was called, or new wave.
And then eventually, after about 6 months or a year, the Americans caught on that you've got to change the way you're doing shit, and you got to,
and then you
get in the game.
And before the invention of the internet, cable television was the revolution, right? The idea that there'd be like any interest you had, there'd be a channel for it. And not all of those promises came true. And there was like Camelot, a brief timing moment. CNN was very important for a long time because it was the news channel and everyone turned to it for news. And MTV for that decade or so was music television, and it was about music, and it was the coolest people and the coolest trends and the coolest styles. And they were able to translate that for a decade or more with the shows you're talking about and making television for that audience and still sort of, and it's an amazing time. I will say, because nostalgia is lovely and you forget a lot of the stuff, but I worked at MTV sort of in the second wave. A lot of the interns, Doug Herzog, Lauren Correo, all those people would come in as interns and young people had become like the senior VPs and run it, and we're doing an amazing job. But they had great pride in it because they'd grown it, from scratch. Mm-hmm. They took chances and they broke the rules and they edited things differently, and they just, it was kind of old fashioned and newfangled all at the same time.
Oh, I do want to say to get a piggyback on that is that fundamentally changed the way Hollywood edited TV shows and movies and everything. Suddenly you had short, punchy scenes.
The idea about everything with close-ups and over the shoulders went away. Tell the story, make it dance. And the only thing I'll say is, but during my time at MTV, and it was only a couple of years, I wasn't as a senior there, is they said working for MTV is like dating a beautiful girl who treats you like shit. Because it was also, it sort of exploited young people at the beginning. It was young, it was long hours. It was relentless.
Which is where World of Wonder learned that particular trick.
No, but and that's where great things come from. But I'm just saying, it was, it wasn't posh. It was the coolest place in town. It was downtown.
And I just want to say very quickly, Love's in Jeopardy is by the Greg Kihn Band.
Love's in Jeopardy. Baby.
I pretend to have forgotten about it, not to make it all about me, but I worked at 120 Minutes for a few weeks and wrote a couple of shows. And the funny thing was,
I was there for 4 days.
I thought I was
in 1991, September 3rd through the 2nd.
I worked at 120 Minutes for 120 minutes. Okay.
And I thought I was so clever writing this brilliant script, and took it to Kevin Seal, who I thought was really cute. And he took one look at it and said, I can't say this shit. It was just like words, too many words. It was like, no, that was it. All right. Let's take a quick break. And when we come back, we'll reveal the number one thing that made us go, wow, this week.
You're listening to World of Wonders Wow Report. Things that make us go wow.
And welcome back to the Wow Report. I'm Fenton here with Tom and James. And we've reached number one.
Well, how could it be anything other than
number one?
The real bombshell that happened this week. Am I right, Tom? Take it away.
The resignation of Governor Andrew Cuomo.
And every Cuomo-sexual in the country feels defeated and lied to. Remember a year ago how we thought he was the great savior of the Democratic Party?
Yeah, he's a very powerful commander. The thing is that people are many things. I'm not making an excuse for his behavior, but people are many things. They're alpha, they're leaders, they're commanding, they get your attention. They can also be inappropriate, not know boundaries, and take things for granted, and behaviors that aren't cool anymore. In defense of, it's humbling when it happens to someone on your team, if you're going to call it that. Because you want your heart to believe them, and over time you couldn't. And this is where I give the Democrats great points. Is there was a commission, there was an investigation. It was thorough. The report was released. It wasn't held. You know what I'm saying? That's the Republicans play another way.
Republicans, Trump gets. Jim Jordan, all of them have sexual scandals hanging over them, and the Republicans consistently turn their heads and pay no attention to it. At least the Democrats do the right thing, and when there's a cancer, you get rid of it.
And I'm disappointed that he's gone. I'm disappointed that he had to leave.
And I'm disappointed that Chris Cuomo chose to address it the way he did on CNN by not addressing it. And I think Chris Cuomo has been helping his brother all along try and finagle his way out of the situation. It's disappointing that Chris Cuomo is getting swept up, and there are calls for him to resign from CNN.
And I don't know all the details with the brother, who I think is really, I'm homosexual for, Chris. But imagine if if these things are being said about your brother, and you believe them to not be true, then where's your loyalty land, and how do you deal with it as a public person? It's a very difficult situation.
It is, but for CNN to put out the edict that Chris Cuomo was not allowed to talk to it on the air made it look like he was part of a cover-up or whatever. I think the thing to do is you have to address it head on, and they tried to sweep it under the rug for Chris's show, and it just made him look sort of cringy and wrong. I didn't like that.
I hope that part passes, because I think it's very difficult. With all of the bravado of these public figures, they're people, they're vulnerable, they're scared, they've got family. I know there's lots of things, but I think the right thing was done. And I'm just, it always feels like the Democrats cave, and the Republicans don't. But I do feel like at least we don't play by those same dirty rules. And if that is our end as a party or as a civilization, so be it. It's just like, I think the truth is stronger, and who knows? It's too early to know what might be next for Andrew Cuomo, if anything. But maybe there's a chapter, a learning and an awakening and a new mission for him.
I think we're done with Andrew Cuomo. I don't think we need to revisit it. I do think that right now we need to turn our focus to the new female governor, the woman who is I like the way she looks. I like what I hear from her so far. Although there have been a few, I see in the Daily Mail, they're starting to dig up dirt about her, and that there's all sorts of, her husband is with the Entertainment Commission in New Jersey or something that looks like a conflict of interest that they're going to try and play up on, as they do. So that's where I'm interested to see where it's going. I don't think we need to keep following up with Andrew Cuomo anymore.
Right.
And we've run out of time. Oh, James, thank you so much. Tom,
so blathering on and on and on, as you do.
Hey, well, actually, James, for you, I've got one last plug. This week's episode of the WOW Podcast Network's The Things That Made Me Queer with Crystal, who's in RuPaul's Drag Race UK Season 1. It's a great podcast. And this week's episode is all about me. So I can't recommend it enough. It's absolutely fabulous. And James, you should go on this podcast.
Wait, what? Crystal said you made her queer?
It's a podcast called The Things That Made Me Queer. And you talk about, it's a bit like Desert Island Discs, or Desert Island Dicks, if you will, where you talk about the seminal things that made you queer.
Seminal.
And Crystal said that you made her queer?
No, love. The podcast is called The Things That Made Me Queer, and guests go on and talk to Crystal about the things in their life, products, shows, people, paintings, places that made them queer.
In this week, you are the person who talks about the things that
Thank
made
you.
you
We got
queer.
there in the end. I think we'll have to cut all this out, but yes.
I think that exchange just made me queer.
I was going to say we might have to do an investigation and then impeach Fenton for making Crystal queer.
God forbid. God forbid.
Same time, same place next week. Until then, go out and do something that makes the world go wow.
Bye.